Holy smokes, we got some crazy Sonic announcements in the past few days, so let's talk about this real quick. 2024 seems to be real packed and epic and gamer for Sonic the Hedgehog right now. So we've got the Knuckles show coming out, we've got Sonic the Hedgehog 3 coming out. In January, we got the final season of Sonic Prime, and now we have Sonic X Shadow Generations. Now, the game was actually leaked like a couple of days before it was announced, and we weren't really sure what we were getting. Like, was Shadow just going to be in Sonic Generations as a playable character? That sounds boring and lame and beta male. But to our surprise, Shadow was getting his own campaign, and it seems like it's its own separate little game that's just packaged with the Sonic Generations remaster. So it seems like Sonic Generations is going to work with the Sonic Generations physics engine, and Sonic's going to control like how he did in that game. But with the Shadow stuff, it looks like they might be going for the Sonic Frontiers physics engine, so it's going to feel a lot more like Sonic Frontiers, unless they just use the same animations, which gives it that Frontiers feel, but they've coded the physics from the ground up again. But considering they couldn't do that for Sonic Frontiers, I doubt that they'd do that for Shadow the Hedgehog and Shadow Generations. But this announcement actually came at a perfect time for me, because I recently went back to play Sonic Adventure in Japanese with accurate subtitles. I modded the PC version of the game so I could get accurate subtitles, so I could just kind of go through the plot again without having to look past the poor dubbing, so I could just experience it in its purest form. And I genuinely think Sonic Adventure 2 is the best Sonic the Hedgehog story. It actually has very little plot holes. Like, a lot of people say there are plot holes in the story. There's like one plot hole, and it's like, for a story as complex as Sonic Adventure 2, of course there'll be like at least one or two plot holes, so it's whatever. And from there, I gained a really deep appreciation for Shadow the Hedgehog. I wasn't too big of a fan of him before. It's not like I disliked him or anything. I did really like Shadow, but I just didn't really care that much until I decided to dig deeper recently. And I genuinely think he is like one of the best Sonic characters, if not the best. But of course, after Sonic Adventure 2, things went a little downhill with Shadow the Hedgehog, the video game, which, again, I stand by the fact that its artistic integrity is awesome. Like, a story that branches and you can make choices and it all kind of culminates to a one single true ending is really awesome. It's really cool, but it just wasn't executed right. Like, Shiro Maekawa, for example, wrote stories in his spare time, and he wrote Sonic Adventure 2. He had some kind of experience, but with Shadow the Hedgehog, it was written by Takashi Iizuka, and I don't think he has any experience writing. I don't think he's talked about that. So when you're not that experienced, but you try to go for something ambitious, you know, it's commendable. I'm so on board for a Shadow the Hedgehog remake, and they fix it, but they need someone else to write it. But that's the thing, because Shadow the Hedgehog was so poorly written, people have a really poor grasp of who Shadow the Hedgehog is. Because he goes through such an important character arc in that game, and then in Sonic 06 you see him fully self-actualized. People joke about Shadow the Hedgehog being edgy, but the only reason is because Shadow the Hedgehog, the video game, made him speak a little edgier just because they were aiming for a teen rating, and then they decided against that, so there's a bit of jarringness going on. And on top of that, I'm sure that the English dub didn't help either, because it was just really poorly written as well. So it was a really poorly written English dub based on a really poorly written story, and you can see how Shadow the Hedgehog's character just doesn't get through. Even after Sonic 06, just because no one cares about that game, people don't really understand how cool and calm Shadow is now as a character. Like, he is not edgy anymore. But unfortunately, that's just how the mainstream sees him, so Sega would like, okay, let's just make Shadow an edgy caricature. So that's how he's been for a few years. But Sonic Prime has done a lot of good for Shadow. I think, like, Shadow's character is really good in that series. He's a bit edgy, but that's because he doesn't trust Sonic, and that makes sense because Sonic in Sonic Prime is a character you wouldn't trust because he's impulsive. And now Sega themselves are trying to fix Sonic and his characters in their own games as well. As you can see from Frontiers, they tried to fix a lot of things. They tried to bring back a strong sense of continuity, and again, I have my gripes with Sonic Frontiers. I don't think it's a good game, but I can really appreciate that they're trying again. And honestly, in my opinion, the best case scenario is a remake of Sonic Adventure 2, a remake of Sonic Heroes, followed by a remake of Shadow the Hedgehog, and a remake of Sonic 06, but that is very unlikely, so this is literally the next best thing, a Shadow Generations. And it's not like Sonic Generations where he just goes through old stages. Shadow Generations is going to reintroduce Shadow the Hedgehog. He's going to go through his past, not just for the sake of nostalgia, but they're going to tell a story here which will help Shadow reclaim his place as the ultimate life form. And like I said, because Shadow the Hedgehog's story is so confusing, they need to somehow clean it up. They need to be like, okay, here are the definitive canon events, this is what happens to Shadow, this is the arc he goes through, and this is how he turns out at the end. And Shadow Generations is a perfect way of helping us go through Shadow's history and just understanding his character beat for beat, just all the important bits. No filler, no Neo Metal Sonic plot, no branching story paths, just the Shadow story, just the core of it. Just the progression he goes through across those 4 games. The only thing I am worried about though is just the fact that I didn't like the writing in Sonic Frontiers, so I'm worried that the writing is not going to be good for Shadow the Hedgehog Generations, but generally Shadow does need his character cleared up. This is a way to do it. In a perfect world, they would have had good games, you know, Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06 would have been good, and in a slightly less perfect world, we would have gotten remakes of Shadow and Sonic 06, but we're in a slightly less perfect world, so we will be getting Shadow Generations. Hopefully we're not in a slightly less perfect world where Shadow Generations turns out bad, but surprisingly, the production quality of the game looks really good. Like, if you look at Sonic Frontiers, everything looks so stiff and bland, but Shadow Generations really pops. The art style looks fantastic, and the animation quality is a big step up from Sonic Frontiers. Maybe because Shadow Generations is a shorter and a lot more condensed game that the staff aren't stretched thin like they were in Frontiers, or maybe because they have a lot more confidence in Sonic again, they've given the staff a lot more time, a lot more budget to work with. Whatever the reason, it just looks good. And it just feels good to say that we're in an era of Sonic where we can just look at the game and go like, yeah, this looks good, it might turn out fine. The only worrying thing is that it's a Sonic Team game. The last 3 Sonic games we've got, Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Superstars, and Sonic Dream Team, they've all been made by different studios. This one is Sonic Team is going to be made in-house, and Sonic Frontiers was made in-house and it wasn't very good. Although I will admit the Cyberstage level design was okay, it worked, so Shadow the Hedgehog level design could work. The only issue I have, or the only worry I really have, is the physics. If we get Frontiers cyberspace physics again, I will cry. But that's just speculation. At least everything we've seen so far genuinely does look good. The Bio-Lizard fight looks insane. They're really ramping up the stakes here. He's like sticking to the walls like a spider. Shadow's moveset as well, like they're actually taking it to the next level. In most Sonic games, Shadow just controls like Sonic, but you can see here Shadow's homing attack isn't a homing attack, it's chaos control. And he can throw the Chaos Sphere like on command, it's just not a cutscene thing. So it's not just a reskin of Sonic, they're really considering what powers Shadow has and integrating it into the gameplay. Can we also just appreciate the little things we have here, like Shadow can throw his Chaos Sphere while running. And then he smoothly transitions into a running animation as he continues, like what? That's crazy. In Sonic Frontiers when Sonic had to throw a punch, he just stopped. In Sonic Frontiers, when he's in the air doing animations, when he's punching in the air, he looks like he's standing in the air. With Sonic Frontiers, like none of Sonic moves felt like they transitioned smoothly while in motion or standing or whatever. But just from that tiny footage we have of Shadow throwing Chaos Sphere, looks like they actually are making sure that the game flows well with his moveset. The only thing I'd say looks bad is the Shadow Chaos Control homing attack, because he does that little flip spinning animation that Sonic does in Frontiers after his homing attack. They should have given Shadow like a kicking and a punching animation, and then it would alternate between the two during, you know, every other homing attack, but, you know, whatever. The rest of the game looks really good production-wise. Like, it is such a big step up from Sonic Frontiers. But that's all I can squeeze out of 30 seconds of footage, so let's talk about the Sonic Cinematic Universe real quick. So at the time of this recording, it's just been a few hours after we got the Sonic 3 movie logo teaser video, so it showed off the logo all animated, and then it had Live and Learn playing in the background, which is very awesome, and Johnny Gioeli teased that he might be in the movie as well, singing the lyrics to Live and Learn, which is very cool, and very, I'm excited to, yeah. But probably the most interesting news we got like from a few weeks ago was the Sonic movie and Knuckles TV show animatics getting leaked. And on top of that, the Knuckles show has its episodes titles registered, so you can see that publicly. There are 3 episode titles that stick out though, the first being the second episode, and it's titled, Don't Ever Say I Wasn't There For You. And the reason why it sticks out is because it kind of seems like a really emotional episode. Like, I'm just like imagining it's like an anime episode title where maybe 2 characters get into an argument and then one of them's arguing like, you're never there for me, and then the other one goes like, yes, I did all this stuff, I was always there for you, so don't ever say I was never there for you, and then the episode just ends. It just seems like that kind of episode. Then to cap it all off, they show the episode title and it just says, don't ever say I wasn't there for you, and it just seems like that weird, goofy but emotional kind of anime drama thing going on. The next is the third episode, which is called the Shabbat Diner. Now this could just be a coincidence, but maybe they chose the word Shabbat specifically to hint at a bat character in the show. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. The point is, Shabbat is something Jewish, and I don't know what that has to do with Sonic and why they're going to a Jewish place. So it does feel like I don't know, yeah, I don't know. And the last interesting title is the fourth episode, which is The Flames of Disaster. Now, when I originally saw this, I thought like maybe the Sonic Cinematic Universe was building up to a Sonic 06 adaptation. But no, if you look at the animatic that got leaked, it looks like the Flames of Disaster is a power that Knuckles gains. Like, he's got fiery fists now, which he does in Sonic Frontiers, so it makes sense. But that's a bit blue balling there, calling it the Flames of Disaster. I also did look at the Sonic 3 movie stuff, and it looks pretty spoilery, so I'm not going to mention that, but I will just say, like, what is even happening in Sonic 3? Even after taking a look at the animatic, I have no idea what's going on, and I'm excited to find out. And honestly, it's kind of a good thing that it's not the original story, like just beat for beat. I think it is good that they're making changes, like not just because there are new characters and they're in a new universe, but there are significant changes where even as a Sonic fan who knows the story inside and out, you will be surprised, and that's really awesome. There is also the possibility that there are a few things going on here and there to fix up some plot holes or some, you know, unexplained things that people have been wondering about Sonic Adventure 2 for a few years now. I'm not going to explain that. I'm not going to tell you what it is to refrain from spoilers, but there are some things that could actually fix some inconsistencies within the Sonic lore. And speaking of inconsistencies within the Sonic lore, there is one more thing I want to mention, and it's the Black Arms. Now, in the Sonic games, they are an alien race from Shadow the Hedgehog. Again, this isn't a spoiler, but it seems like in the Knuckles show there will be a group of people called the Black Arms who have mechs, which is interesting. It feels like an MCU-ification of the Sonic series at this point, where they're dropping references through names, but the actual thing isn't really there yet. It could also be possible that these guys actually worship the Black Arms alien race and there's some kind of cult. I don't know, I'm getting creative with it, but maybe it is just kind of like a name drop reference, and the actual Black Arms could still appear later down the line. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for today. Please subscribe if you're not, like the video, and comment for the algorithm. Bye guys, love you, kiss kiss.